Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to day 7 of my 30-day art challenge. Um, I know it's Labor Day, and so if you're tuning in live, I really appreciate that. I know a lot of folks are busy enjoying. I know here in Northern Virginia, it's a nice day, but when I told my wife I was going to do a live stream, she's like, "But it's a holiday," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you know, art doesn't take a holiday." And it was kind of odd the last 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, to not live stream, but I wasn't sure when I could actually sit down to do the work, but I did it and I posted it, so hopefully you have seen that. So it looks like we got a few people tuning in live. So if you want to pop into the comments and say hi and let us know where you're from, it's always interesting to kind of see that. So today's I'm kind of not feeling the art making. I don't know if you ever get in that sort of mindset, but I think it's partly because I was outside all morning and part of the afternoon doing some yard work, cleaning out the gutters, doing some things that needed to be done around the house. So I'm definitely a bit tired. And the other thing is that if you tuned in last week, you know that I was having water heater issues, and those issues decided to come up again. So right before I started the live stream today, that I noticed that there was a lot of water in my basement from my water heater. So after I'm done with that, with this, then I have to go and attend to that. So my mind really is like not my mind and my body are just kind of like fighting me, like, oh, you know, don't just lay down, take a nap, or go work on the water heater. But I'm like, I want this to be a weekday thing where I definitely come every weekday, 4 to 5 p.m. and make art and share my art with you all. So it's a great motivator. It's a great, like, okay, I'm not in the mood, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And I think that's part of why I'm doing this is to try to get into that rhythm and get into that routine of trying to sit down and make art. It's just an hour, and I think I can go ahead and do that. So anyway, hopefully, grab some materials. Um, I, as I've mentioned before, if you've tuned in, that I don't ever have any idea of where my artwork's going for the most part when I sit down to work. And so I've done 6 pieces already, and I'm not. The one thing that keeps coming up is this idea of mapping, and it's just something that I'm really drawn to, and maybe through this process is trying to figure out what is that attraction. So it's a little scary to sit down and like not be envisioning what you're making, but just to sort of allow the intuitiveness to take over and make decisions just based on, like, oh, let me try that. And then as I work, the meaning starts to unfold. Sometimes the meaning doesn't come until later, until I'm sitting down after the piece is made and I'm looking at it, and it sort of like reveals itself, or sometimes it doesn't. So out of the 6 pieces that I've made, there's probably 2 or 3 that I'm like, oh yeah, those are pretty decent. And there's a couple that I'm like, but that's the point, is like, this isn't about making a masterpiece, making the best piece of art. And the thing is, I might not like it, but other people might, and you just never know what's going to resonate with you or resonate with other people. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. Let me go ahead and switch this over. So we've got my 4.5, 4 inch by 4 inch piece of mixed media paper, and I thought, like, instead of using watercolor, which I tend to kind of start off with, I'm gonna start off with pencil. I really like the mapping element, and so the other day, maybe it was yesterday, I was starting off with a ruler and doing some kind of grid marks. So I think I'm gonna kind of go in with that, but I'm going to use pencil. I don't remember what I used yesterday, but just I'm doing vertical and horizontal lines. It's not an even grid. If we think about mapping, the grid is even so that we can figure out where we are and where we're going. And it might be a little hard to see that. I might have to adjust my exposure for the camera a little bit. I think I can do that. There we go. It's a little bit better. And so a grid just sort of, it's not a, I'm creating a very loose, uneven, irregular grid, and that creates a lot of interest. If it was just very even, very straight, it wouldn't be as interesting visually. It would be very boring if it was just sort of like that checkerboard kind of a look to it. And this is just to kind of give me some lines to work with. And instead of using watercolor, I think I'm just going to stick with my Inktense pencils and use that to build up my layers. And the way I do that is I just kind of scribble, kind of go back and forth, and I'm trying to keep an even pressure. And I'm not going to fill up the whole space, but just a little bit of color down. I don't want it to be too dark, too bright. I'm using a color called mustard, which is kind of like a yellow ochreish color. And got my water, and then I can just spread it. It's a nice bright kind of yellowish golden color. One of my favorite colors. You can tell the pencil's getting short. Actually, that's probably my second or third one. So I bought the big set, and then, you know, it's like you always discover, like, oh, these are my favorite colors. And then the nice thing about the Derwent Inktense is that you can always buy individual pencils. So as I spread it, there's some natural value changes that happen. So some places are a little bit darker, some places are a little bit lighter, and there's also a texture. It might not be something that you can see in the video, but there's some texture from the pencil. And so, you know, very quickly I got 2 layers started. I'm going to go ahead and dry it. So I want to build up a few other shapes or lines, or I'm not even really sure, but I'm going to pick a slightly darker color. Got a color called Willow, which is a darker brown. Actually, there's another one that I like. Let's see. Here we go. So Willow's darker brown, and I have this one, Baked Earth, which is kind of like a terracotta image color. Let me go ahead and sharpen it. So what I find is that as I have used these, I find that there are certain color combinations. That's why I like the big set. I got the big set of 72, and I just find that there are, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 different colors that I really like that work really well together. And so I'll go back again and again and use those. I've been using a lot of squares and rectangles, and I feel like, and circles, I don't know, I come back to them again and again. I think it's because it creates that kind of structure. So we've had more folks tuning in, so as always, if you want to pop into the comments and say hi and let us know where you're tuning in from, or if you have any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to post them in the comments. So this baked earth, like I said, is kind of like a terracotta, reddish brown color. Goes well with that mustard color, that kind of golden ochre color that I used earlier. So I know this way of working might not be completely natural for some folks, and I probably there's probably a lot of people that kind of feel like, oh no, I have to have this idea in mind. So I'd love to kind of hear what people have to say about that. Like, what's been the experience? Have do you find that if you work without an idea that you feel lost, or so if you've got some time and you want to post in the comments anything about that, I think we get this idea that, oh, artists like envision this thing and then they sit down and make that thing, but oftentimes I think artists are trying to discover stuff. So love to hear your take on it. So I just had this thought like, oh, I want to use this darker brown, this willow color, and then I thought, well, I just need to have some stripes in here. Even though I have some pencil marks, I think I'm going to come in and just put some more even, maybe a little darker. It's just kind of like this fleeting thought, like, oh, I could put stripes in. All right, let's do it. So again, trying to listen to that more intuitive voice. And I do some on this side too, just to kind of keep it balanced. so I'm using lots of kind of earthy colors. I really just love this color combination, and I might go even darker with different browns later, but for now I wanted to add a little bit more contrast, and I grabbed my red pen, just trying to think, like, what exactly do I want to do with it? I keep feeling like I want to do little tiny squares. I think it's time for some collage. So if you've tuned in before, you may have seen that I really like topography, and but this is something that I drew myself and then made copies of it. So I like the fact that it's kind of not a real place. But just sort of that idea of, again, going back to that mapping. So a couple folks have chimed in about kind of working with a plan or without a plan. So somebody had kind of asked it, like, you know, what point does it sort of click as far as, like, you know, am I on I guess the right path? There you go. Kind of there's been a lot of mapping and journey and all kind of stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I think with every piece it's kind of different. Sometimes I feel like things click right off the bat, and then it's just sort of a matter of, like, oh yeah, this is working, and I know exactly. Maybe not. It's not that I know exactly where I'm going, but it's more like, oh, this is working, and I really trust that it's going to work out. And other times it's like it's a struggle. It's a struggle, like the entire making of it. And sometimes and I think those are the ones that I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's not working. That didn't work. I don't like that piece. But sometimes I struggle, and then it's like at the very end that it just sort of like you add one thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, that one thing just totally changed the feel, and so. Part of it is that I think the more you make, the more easily the easier it is to follow that intuitive voice, and to kind of feel like maybe to trust it. Like, like, oh, okay, from my experience, I know that if I do this, it will probably work out for the best. I don't know if any of that made any sense whatsoever. It's the thing, sometimes like with making, it's just sort of like, if you've ever taken a class and the teacher is explaining something, and all of a sudden they sort of drift off. Well, that's kind of how it is like talking and creating at the same time sometimes is a little bit difficult. Sorry, I had to take a drink of tea. So yeah, I use my Uhu glue stick a lot. I know some people hate glue stick. I just find that the Uhu works really well. It's archival, it's acid free, it is water soluble, so I do like to use my hair dryer to dry the glue a little bit more. So as I'm looking at this, those pieces I just glued on are sitting right on the top of the surface, and I want to push them down in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find maybe a even darker brown than I've used so far, or maybe go back to that willow. Since I used the willow for the stripes, it might be good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go over these circles again. So just using the pencil on top starts to push that collage in. And that's why I like to use the glue stick. If I were to use acrylic medium, then wherever that acrylic medium is, the pencil wouldn't stick. The watercolor wouldn't go on top of it. Whereas the glue stick, I put it underneath. So yeah, sometimes the glue gets where it's not supposed to, and it kind of resists, but this way I can work right on top. That's why I dried it at first a little bit. That way it's less likely to peel up. I think that's another reason why people don't like glue stick, is that like, oh well, I painted on top of it and it started peeling off. Well, the glue is water soluble. So if you don't have a whole lot of glue on it and you paint over it and it's not totally dry, I find that it does want to peel off. I find if I can let it dry, or like I'm doing here using a hair dryer, can help, and it doesn't peel up as much. So I've been trying to use these colors so it's not super dark yet. And what I'm finding is that I kind of like the ones it's uh, where it's not super dark and maybe a little bit more abstract, but we'll see. Yeah, let me go ahead and try that. So I feel like I'm getting a pretty good background. I want to keep thinking about a face or a profile. Um, in my On day one, I used a photograph, and then on I think it was day three, I did a profile. But I've been playing around with this one type of profile for a while. It's a little bit more stylized, so I think I'm gonna yeah, just trying to figure out how I want to do it. I think I wanted to come over here. So a lot of you probably know that I do a lot of visual journaling, and what I find is that I often explore and experiment and try things out in my journal, and then what I find is that there are certain images that I'm drawn to that I just keep doing them over and over again, whether it's a profile or a face or a mask like thing or little monsters. And so then what I like to do is to take those images and start thinking about working them into my visual or my standalone art. So a lot of people have asked me about, do I take my journals and then like take a page and be like, okay, I'm going to replicate this page as a standalone work of art? And then my answer usually is, well, no. I don't work that way. So I look at the journal sort of as a separate art making activity. And it is a journal, but it's I try to use it daily. But it's a place where ideas come up, and I feel a little bit more open to experimenting in the journal, knowing that like, okay, this is my journal. If it doesn't work, not a big deal. It's in the journal, and it can stay in the journal. But if I find it something compelling, a pattern, a shape, an image of some sort, and I'll explore it a lot. And then, like I said, I'll start to use it in my standalone work. So actually all the techniques that I've been using over the last week have all been ideas that have come from my journal. I mean, that's where I learned how to do the layering that I do. I did that in the journal. All right, so I like I like the positive and negative space. So I've got the face on here. I've got this negative space, but I want to bring that out. So I'm gonna pull out my pencils. I think I'm gonna use again one of my other favorite colors. I used it the other day. Used it with yellow watercolor, and it's the color Shiraz. I gotta find it though. There it is. It's really small because, like I said again, it's one of my favorites. So it's a red wine kind of color, hence Shiraz. Um, so kind of like a burgundy, kind of a dark reddish color. When you color it on, it looks brown. But I'm going to paint water over it and it'll kind of change. It'll be a little bit more red, a little bit more like a red violet, like a dark red violet. So I want it to spread out a lot, so I'm going to shade it out a little bit further just to make sure it's really going to spread. I want to really try to fill this in, but it's going to fade. So it's going to be darker near the profile and lighter as it goes across. So it'll fill that negative space in and create some contrast with the profile. You can see how that really just pops out. You know, it's a real, looks very reddish next to these earthy colors. But you know, it has that kind of hint of purple, of violet in it, so it makes a good contrast with that, the more yellowish, golden colors that I've used. So I often draw this face, and there's another type of face that I draw that's a bit more of a mask-like shape, but I often draw them with their eyes closed. And to me, it's this idea of meditation, of kind of peace. So when we're talking about working intuitively, you know, bringing this face in that is meditating, starts to create meaning. And I don't want to use words, so I want the color and I want the images to sort of create that meaning. So I keep thinking like I want to have something down here, and I've been really using a lot of text, pages of text lately, not so much for the text. I like the texture of it. But it's, you know, this this ties in nicely with the color. It's not totally white. It's kind of yellowish, and kind of like that. So I'm thinking I want this line to be kind of behind the face. However, the face is already on there, so I got to figure out how to cut this little strip to fit around the face. So that worked pretty well to kind of make it look like that printed text goes behind the face. I think just thickening up this line a little bit will help. So I've got thick black lines, and I made them a little bit thicker too, so I kind of feel like I need them elsewhere. So I'm just kind of debating if I just need to bring in, why not? Again, trust in our gut, being spontaneous. So that sort of helps balance it out, but I just realized like I want the negative space now to be more defined. So I think what I want to do is to use my Shiraz, that's not it, and shade around these rectangles, these squares I just drew in. Just a little bit at least. And then also I think I want to shade over here by the chin where that line of text goes behind. I think that would help really push it in. So I'm feeling like it's getting pretty complete. I really like the contrast between the portrait or the profile and the background, but I want to have a little bit more. I think more red. So I'm going to go back. I think I want to pull these squares out again, especially where they got covered up. So I like using these kind of these thin pens to really create some patterns and some textures, especially as kind of a finishing touch. It's kind of a subtle thing, but it just kind of helps fill in. A lot of times it can create, kind of tie things together just because I'm repeating it in various locations throughout the image. Been doing a lot of stripes in this series, but I do a lot of spirals as well, other shapes, patterns. Kind of looking at it and I'm feeling like it's pretty done. So I'm just going to go ahead and sign it. Okay, so it kind of wraps it up for day number 7. This is the 5th of my live streams. So I hope you enjoy kind of watching what I'm doing. Hopefully you're working as well. That's kind of what I thought about whenever I planned this, was like, oh, this would be a perfect opportunity for people to grab their materials and sit down for an hour and kind of make art along. So hopefully you've had that opportunity. And then I know some of you are just kind of tuning in today, probably because of it being a holiday, some of you have off. Um, so yeah, so if you like this, I'm doing it every weekday at 4. If that time is weird, then the videos are automatically saved to Facebook, so you can check them out there. And then I'm also putting them on YouTube as well, so that way you can catch the whole unedited video there. So that way you can just kind of tune in wherever, whenever, however. And then what I've been doing is taking these long videos and turning them into time-lapse videos. So that way you can sit there and instead of an hour, you can watch the whole process in like a minute and a half. So those have been kind of fun. But if you have any questions, if you have any comments, any concerns, anything at all, just pop it into the comments. If you don't want to make a public comment, you can always email me or DM me or whatever, and I'll try to respond. But I do try to sit down later and kind of read through the comments and respond to people. So even after I'm done today, if you think of something, you can always pop on. So one of the things with this challenge has been that I've been really limiting myself, and I think that's a struggle that a lot of young artists do, a lot of beginning artists have, is that there's so many choices. How do we like overcome that? We can get so caught up in our choices that we just stall, we freeze, because it's not that we can't think of what to do, it's that we just have so many different choices. So giving myself that limit, that it's only going to be an hour, that I'm going to work on a 4x4 inch square, which is very different from things that I've done before. Limiting it to not using words. Now, yes, the page of text has words on it, but I'm using it more as a texture, not so much as like, oh, read this and it gives you the meaning. So I'm trying to really explore how everything that I'm doing can convey the meaning without explicitly saying this is what it means. And sometimes I feel like it works, and sometimes I don't. And that's part of the art making process, is that not everything that you make is going to be a winner. It's not going to be a masterpiece. If I do this as a 30-day challenge and I have 30 that I make, if I get 2 or 3 out of the whole series that I'm just like, yes, this is really strong, I would say that's a win, because I just think this is about showing up. It's about being here and just trying to make every day for at least September, and we'll see if I can kind of carry it on after that. But like I said, if you've got any questions, any comments, put it in the comments, and I'm going to look through, see if if I've missed anything, and no, it seems like it's just the same comments. And like I said, I'll sit down and respond to things as well a little bit later. But anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this. And like I said, I'll be back tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and every weekday, and maybe some weekends. I wasn't able to do it this weekend, but definitely 5 days a week during the weekdays I'll be live streaming. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I really appreciate it.